What's going on, fellow growers? Andrew from Tail Wagon Farms. Today, I'm going to show you how to trellis up some tomatoes. Here in the hoop house, we have our indeterminate tomatoes, and we've been out of town, so they got a little crazy. So, I'll show you how to prune them and string them up in here using the lean and lower method. The first trellising technique I'm going to show you today is the lean and lower method. We used it last year out here in the hoop house to great success. We were still harvesting tomatoes in November, so even after our first frost, it was awesome. So a couple of tools that we're going to use today is the tomahawk from Johnny's. This is twine that you can lower down as the plant grows. Tomato clips, which we will use to attach the tomatoes to the string, and I like to use garden staples to hold it down so I don't have to tie it to the plant. So the first step that we need to do when we're lean and lower trellising is to make sure we have a system in place overhead. So we have this cable that runs the length of the hoop house. We have one over each of the two inside rows, and that's where our hooks are going to hang off of, and the line will go down to our plants. Could use a ladder. Last year I decided to make this handy little tool here. It's a garden staple that's been bent and put inside a piece of PVC pipe. That way I don't need to have a ladder in here at all times. So to get it up there, I just put it around the edge here, go up, and hang the hook. The next step is we want to have enough line out that it'll go to the ground, and we're going to just tie a simple little overhand knot. I usually like to put the stake in the ground. I put it on the other side of our drip irrigation. That way it kind of holds the drip irrigation line in place, and then just tighten it up. This line does not need to be super tight. It actually makes it a little easier when we're letting out more line once these plants get tall if it's a little loose. Next step is going to be use one of our tomato clips. We're going to grab the main stem of our plant. This one is a sunrise bumblebee, like a cherry tomato, and we're going to pick our main stem, put the clip on, and lock it in, and it'll hold the plant up. The tomato clips have little teeth on the inside, so just a close-up of what we want to do with this. We're going to grab our main stem of the plant and take the clip, push it in, and then when we close it and lock it, the teeth are gripping onto the string, holding it up. Next step, we need to prune this thing. So this tomato plant here is a sunrise bumblebee, which is a indeterminate cherry tomato, which means it will continuously produce fruit up until frost. So I like to train them to a single main stem and prune off all the suckers. I've been pretty negligent on this one because I've been out of town, but I'll give you an idea of what we want to do here. So right here in the middle of the tomato, we can see the stem goes straight up. We have a leaf that goes straight out, and then on a 45-degree angle in the crotch here, we have a sucker coming out and growing. That's what we're going to try to avoid. I usually start at the bottom and work my way up and get rid of all of the suckers, being careful not to cut off the growing tip at the end. So starting at the bottom, I'll just go through here. Nice sharp pair of pruners, because these guys are a little big. If they're nice and small like this one right here, we can just take our fingers, pull them off. That's actually the preferred method. We got this big one right here. That's gonna go. You can actually just stick these in the ground if you want another plant. As long as you water it, they usually root pretty quickly. So looking that way, I believe I got all of the sucker growth off. And with tomato plants, it's really important to keep the foliage off the ground. This helps prevent the spread of diseases. So I'm going to go through and cut off any leaves that are near the ground or touching the ground. Some of these bigger leaves here, a lot of times I'll just trim them halfway just to keep them off the ground. So that's our first plant done, and it's good to see they're flowering. Because they're in the hoop house, I also have to pollinate these myself, and in order to pollinate a tomato, all you have to do is just tap it, or you can tap the stem, tap the string. To show you again how to prune these, you start at the bottom. This one might be a little easier to see. This is a Lucky Tiger, another kind of grape style tomato, but it looks delicious. We're going to start at the bottom, cut off any suckers as we work our way to the top. And if you have any doubt if it's sucker or not, just leave it until it gets a little bigger. That's especially important up near the top where the tip is. So if you cut the tip off and you don't have any suckers, you got to wait for more suckers to form for the plant to keep growing. So start at the bottom. Sucker, suckers. Get all these little suckers off. Ideally, you want to get these when they're smaller, like this size, and you can just get them with your fingers. Tomatoes will leave green on your fingertips though, and you will get some sticky fingers. Next step is to prune off any leaves that are touching the ground or close to the ground. And one more little sucker. And this Lucky Tiger looks pretty good right now. Now, as far as clipping goes, I like to clip usually between 8 and 10 inches apart. As the plant gets taller, you can spread them out a little more. And if I usually take clips from the bottom where it no longer really needs the support, and just kind of cycle them up to the top as the plant gets taller. So, got a whole bunch more to do. So some of the benefits of the lean and lower trellis system are it allows us a much easier way to harvest, and it seems to help with our disease pressure. And we're also able to grow more plants underneath. So it really maximizes our space. Some of the cons of it, though, are it does cost money to set up. The tomahawks and the tomato clips do cost money, and it is pretty labor intensive, as you'll see later in the season. I'm all done setting up the lean and lower trellises for the tomatoes. In a later video, I'll show you how to maintain them and to actually do the leaning and the lowering. This method also works really well for cucumbers, which I'm going to be doing next. And it works pretty good for eggplants and some peppers varieties too. So on to the next trellising method. So another real simple method to trellis a tomato is just putting a stake in the middle, like this piece of conduit here. Use like bamboo poles, stuff like that. And this is a determinate variety, the dwarf Stony Brook. It's an open source seed from the Dwarf Tomato Project, and it stays pretty small. But what I would do once it gets a little bigger is just take maybe a little Velcro tape and just support it a little bit. This method works pretty good for some determinate stuff. You can use it for indeterminate, but you need a really long stake, so just keep that in mind. For the next type of trellis that we're going to go over is the Florida weave. What we need for that is some T-posts. I got a 6-foot T-post here. I'm using baling twine just because it holds up really well. And we got a T-post driver. We like to buy the T-posts that are a little heavier duty for all of our T-post needs around the property. They seem to last a lot longer, and then the little U-shaped posts, and they're just a lot more sturdy. We're spacing these 2 posts on the end, and then about 7 feet from each other in the middle, and using a T-post pounder, but you can use a little mini sledgehammer. The T-post pounder just makes it a little easier to get them in the ground. Now that I got all the T-posts pounded in, what I'm going to do is I took a piece of 1-inch PVC that's 3 feet long, 4 feet long, 3.5 feet long. threaded my line through there, and I'm going to use this to be able to weave it. It makes it just a little simpler. So the first step is going to tie this on about 6 inches off the ground. And Maury says hello. So now what I'm going to do is take my stick or my PVC pipe, and I'm just going to go weave in and out of each plant. So outside, inside. I'm going to set that down. A little too sweaty right now. There. I'm going to wrap this around once at the pole, making sure it's good and tight. Just like that. And continue my weave. Keep continuing weaving. Till I get to the end. And here, I'm gonna do a double wrap. Hold it good and tight. Give it a second wrap. And now, coming back the other way, I want to go on the other side of the plants. So that holds them up. When you get to the end, you want to wrap it around. Pull it tight. And just secure it with a knot. As these plants get taller, we'll keep adding strings to keep them upright and to keep them from falling over.
So I've chosen to use baling twine to run in between my plants. This is because it's a little thicker and it seems to last longer and it doesn't stretch. I wish I could use a compostable material, but it just doesn't seem to hold up for the season. The Florida weave does work best for determinate varieties, plants that we're not going to have to prune through the season. So as these grow, it just makes it a little easier to maintain.
Well, fellow growers, I got the Florida weave trellis done, and I got all my tomatoes in the hoop house set up for leaning lower. So, hope you learned something. It was a hot day out here on my second shirt, and as you can see, I'm going to need a third shirt at some point. So, thanks for coming out. If you have any questions about trellising tomatoes, or let me know how you guys are trellising your tomatoes, leave it down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Happy growing.
Just a little note at the end here. Depends on how many plants you're growing, which technique might be the best for you. If you're growing 1 or 2 plants, just growing them up a 6-foot pole might work best. For us, these techniques really help us maximize our harvest, so happy growing.